once a bank gets a license to operate in any jurisdiction, the license under which they function will set out what it is that their obligations are, will indicate clearly what their regulatory responsibilities are, who it is that their regulator will be, and other matters to indicate what they should do from day to day under the licenses that have been granted. As regulator, the Bank of Jamaica, for example, in the case of Jamaica, will have certain guidelines that determine what banks should do and how it is that they monitor the operations of those banks. And in our case, the Bank of Jamaica operates by reference to what we call a prudential model for regulation. And what does that mean? The bank will effectively examine the operations of those institutions that they regulate to see that they are carrying out their functions in a way which have regard for good financial practices and for ensuring that they don't run insolvent and they don't put the customers' monies at risk. And why is this important? Banks themselves are there, in a traditional sense, to operate as a place where persons can put their money. It becomes effectively what we call a store of wealth. Because when you take your monies to a bank, the expectation is that the bank will keep that money for you and they will hopefully be able to pay you an interest on your money. So in order to do that, what do they then have to do? They then have to themselves invest and use that money to be in a position where they can work it for you, for themselves really, in a view, so that they can be able to pay you back your money when you require it. So what the business of banks then include is that it includes lending and it includes engaging in other services which are fee collecting services that enable them to be able to return your money to you with interest as the case may be from time to time, right? And we are operating in an environment, of course, where it is unlikely, particularly in small economies, that there's any business that can operate without relying on things which are coming from other jurisdictions, other countries, right? And the way to interface with other countries is to do through the financial sector. And in many instances, bank and near banks and so on, that will provide those intermediation services that will allow for business to develop and thrive. And in doing that, the bank is doing something else. It is serving a broader economic function for the economy as a whole. And so it all ties back, you know. And we all sometimes get lost in so much in our individual areas of practice and what we're concerned about, that we forget that it takes the whole to function. There are complementary parts, and they all must work seamlessly together if we want to get the best out of ourselves and out of the economies in which we function. And the banks are critical to that, and they too must function in a way which recognizes the overarching obligation to attain sustainable economic development for the good of all, including themselves.
Join us for episode 3 in season 2 of the JAIAC's Dispute Management in a New World podcast series, Conversations with Dr. Christopher Malcolm. Don't miss part 1 of our 2-part series on de-risking bank and bank customers.